Okay, hi everybody. Thank you for coming to the Breathwork Masterclass. I've always wanted to do one of these because obviously breathwork is my thing. Um, and yeah, I just think it's such valuable information to have. And I always share snippets, obviously, on any of my courses. One of them having a lot of snippets because it's the entire certification course. But I share snippets online and, there's always follow-up questions. And I was like, you know what, I should just do an informative masterclass so that people can learn more about breath work and the benefits of it. Because I think, you know, it's one of those things like, what are the benefits of drinking water? Like, there's infinite benefits because it's one of those things you need to survive. So, breathing is kind of the same way. And then there's also so many interesting books coming out lately with James Nestor's Breathe in 2020. I think it was in 2019, the Oxygen Advantage came out. So, breath work and breathing, I don't like to say the term properly because thank you for joining. Because, we're all different human beings and we all have different bodies. So there isn't like the golden mean of breathing. As long as you are doing it, yes, we want that. But there is ways to breathe more optimally. And I think people are really starting to learn about this and explore it. So yeah, I would love to share all the fun stuff about breath work, and then we'll do a breath work together at the end. I have not planned that yet, so we'll see what it is when we get there. But I'm going to share my deck slash PowerPoint slash pitch. People call it a pitch? I don't know. Someone, if you can correct me in the chat if I'm saying everything wrong, but one of those three things is going to pop up in a moment when I learn how to share my screen. Beautiful. Oh, yay. Okay, yay. I mean, it's not perfect, but we'll go with it. I love it. Okay. Can everybody see it okay? You guys give me a thumbs up. Amazing. Amazing. We'll just move it over here. Okay, so this is me. That's my name, MJ Renshaw. This is the month and the year. I'm just kidding. And this is obviously the Being Method Breathwork Masterclass. If you guys don't know me and who I am, MJ Renshaw, obviously, and I teach the Being Method, which is a breathwork certification course. And then I also have the Being Portal, which is like a breathwork experience, I guess, an online breathwork experience where you can do breathwork yourself. It's a little bit more than like an app that you would get. It's not just 10 minutes of like square breathing, no shade to that though. I actually have those apps and I love them. It's more, 20 minutes of breathing or 30 minutes of breathing, taking you on, a little breathwork journey. And then there's integration, which is a big part of doing any sort of experience. You're integrating it and, writing down, it's journaling, writing down what you've learned and what's come up for you is a big part of that healing process. And it's set in such a way, whatever, that's what the Being Portal is. You guys can check that out later if you want. But yeah, those are the two things I do mainly. I love breath work. I got certified in, I can't tell you what year it was. I was 23. And I haven't looked back. After that, I studied osteopathy, and that's kind of why my breath work is really based in science and anatomy and physiology. That's my, I don't want to say expertise because I'm definitely not an expert in anatomy and physiology. There's like infinite things to know, but it's definitely where I'm most interested in, and that's what I like. So that's what I teach, and that's what I like to talk about. So today, we're going to kind of talk about 4 parts to breath work. Like I said, it's hard to be like, what are the benefits of breath work? It's just like you literally could say everything. And it would help with everything because it's breathing. Like breathing is everything, right? You cannot live without it. So we're going to talk about how to breathe. 95% of people are doing it wrong, which is like an insane stat to hear, and don't quote me on that. That's James Nestor who says that. So James Nestor says that he actually wrote in the book 90% of people are breathing wrong, and then later had to correct it because scientists were like, no, it's actually way worse than what you think. And we'll talk about the ways in which people can breathe wrong and not all of us are breathing wrong in all the different ways, but at least one way. Like I know for me, when I started learning about it, I was like, oh, like I am, I'm a runner. I do breath work. I didn't do breath work at the time when I started, not regularly, when I started kind of testing myself and seeing where my breath was. But I definitely failed. Like I failed the how to breathe thing. And I was like, oh wow, this is really interesting. And I failed to like the degree where I got a score that was like what you would give maybe like a 74-year-old man who had COPD. And it was shocking. Like I was like, what? And there's so many reasons for that. It doesn't necessarily just mean that you have like bad physiology or bad lungs. It can be, if anyone's ever done breath work and they've experienced kind of like nervousness or sympathetic response, it can be trauma. Like it can be trauma that causes us to hyperventilate a little bit throughout our lives and not breathe as properly as we can. And I'm guessing that's where mine came from. So we'll talk about that later. And if you guys want to, we can talk about how to test yourself. Then we'll go on to the health benefits of it. I put this into two categories: physiology and anatomy. Again, that's what I know. I'm not a nutritionist. So I don't know much about that stuff, but I do know about the digestive system and I do know about breathing. So we'll talk about that stuff. So just breath in terms of the health benefits of doing breath work and learning how to breathe properly. We'll talk about the aesthetics. Again, it's not the most important thing in life, but we'd be lying if we said we didn't care about it. And also, I think there's so many things that we buy or procedures that we do that breathwork can help you with. So I'm a big fan of anything that's free and like natural. Yeah, we people should know about it and how it can help you, especially if it's going to save you money or make something more like accessible and have no side effects. So that's why I always like to talk about the aesthetics behind breathwork. And then lifestyle. I think breath work and learning how to breathe can literally help you in ways that you probably don't even have any clue. It's probably helped me in ways where I haven't even put two and two together. But just like a simplified way of putting it is, I mean, it's a way of regulating your nervous system. So if you can imagine how you show up in your life, if your nervous system is dysregulated in a way and you don't have the tools to regulate it, breathwork can really change your entire life. Like every single aspect of it, from relationships, career to, just being able to relax and have fun. So that's what we'll do today. I will try not to make this long, but if you know me, you know I love the science. Like I'm not going to jump into doing the breath work without um, talking about the whys of it, because I'm a naturally very curious person. So this is the how to breathe part. Essentially, I kind of separated them into three parts. There's more, but these are the three that we're going to just focus on. The first one is just breathing through your nose versus your mouth. Again, in James Nestor's book, he says that around 65% of people breathe through their mouth, which is, again, a really high number considering that our mouths are designed for eating, not breathing. So if you're wondering, or I mean, it's hard to know. Like you either know you breathe through your mouth during the day or you don't. That's pretty easy because we're awake. But at night is kind of the sneaky one where it gets a lot of people. So I would say if you don't know if you breathe through your mouth at night, get someone to check on you. And or ways that you can tell are getting up to pee a lot could mean that you are in a sympathetic state, which mouth breathing puts you into a sympathetic state, puts you into a stressed out state. So mouth breathers tend to be more stressed than people who breathe through their nose. And also just if you wake up really thirsty, pretty good indication that you've been breathing through your mouth. If anyone's ever like drank a lot and then you wake up and you're like, oh, like so thirsty, it's probably because, I mean, alcohol dehydrates you, but you were also probably drunk and breathing through, like catching flies. So those are kind of good indications that you're breathing through your mouth. There's no harm to breathing through your mouth in short spurts. Like if you're in a breathwork class or a yoga class and they have you breathing through your mouth, like you're not going to die. It's totally okay. I'm talking about how you breathe the majority of your life. This is like 99% of the time, how are you breathing, right? So if you're like, oh my God, I did a breath work, and we breathe through our mouth, like, don't worry about it. It's totally fine. We're talking about what you're doing most of the time. So, mouth breathing, I mean, the biggest hit I would think is your immune system. When we breathe through our nose, we've got all these fun things called boogers and all these little caverns that the air goes into. And then we have immune system cells up there that are going to take care of any pathogens, viruses, or bacteria that we're breathing in. And it will help filter it out. All the hairs will catch on to things. So even something like hydrogen chloride from a train accident, if you breathe through your nose, you're less likely to get that toxin inside of your body because all the little ciliary hairs are going to catch that. If you breathe through your mouth, it's just basically going right into your body, right into your bloodstream. And that's why, I think that some people were more prone to getting COVID than others because they were mouth breathing, whether or not they were wearing a mask, right? So your nose is your first defense system on everything that you could possibly get in the air. And that's why nose breathing is so important. If anyone's ever had their tonsils taken out, it's probably because as a kid you were mouth breathing a lot. Tonsils are, part of our immune system, and they can get chronically inflamed if they're overworked. And they get overworked when we are constantly breathing through our mouths. Um, breathing through your mouth can change. Breathing through your mouth can change your facial structure, especially if you've done it since a kid. People kind of have challenged me a little bit on, like, as an adult, you can't change your facial structure. You 100% can. First of all, your facial structure is built up of muscles. So, like, we can change muscles. That's very easy to do. And then, second of all, the sutures of our face, which are like our skull isn't just one big bone, it's 18 different bones, and it has sutures, which are joints. They're movable. That's why people do cranial sacral therapy, right? So I'm sure if you've noticed, like if you have grandparents still, like people's faces start to change as they get older. Like one eye starts to droop down a little bit more. And this could be, just muscular, but it actually could have to do with their bones shifting. And this can change with how we breathe. There's like 50,000 other things that can also change it, but breathing is one of those things. So Weston A. Price was a doctor. I don't know when he did this, but he essentially wanted to know why indigenous cultures had amazing teeth. And then, my background, which is British, we had like crowded, horrible, rotting teeth. And he was like, why is that? Because why? So he kind of wrote a book and did all his studies, and he deduced that it was diet. So because the Industrial Revolution happened, we were eating processed foods and soft foods and a lot of foods that were allergens. So it caused people's noses to block up. And because all those kids were eating allergens and their noses blocked up, they tend to breathe through their mouth, which made their jaws get smaller. And that was kind of his way of putting, if you breathe through your nose, people tend to have like a wider jaw, more space for teeth. And that doesn't mean, like, just because, like, for instance, in my family, my mom had a very narrow jaw. She had to have a lot of teeth removed, and she was a mouth breather. She had two kids, my brother and I. He mouth breathed and I didn't. He had his tonsils taken out. He had chronic bedwetting. He had to have more teeth taken out. And I didn't because I just by some chance didn't ever mouth breathe. So you're not like damned if you're British, a British background. But our lifestyle does play into why you would breathe through your nose or through your mouth. Like if you were being fed dairy as a kid and you had an allergy to it and it made your nose stuffy, then it's going to be hard for you, right? Oral health is a big one. It chronically dehydrates your mouth. That's pretty obvious. I wrote dehydrations below, but it does chronically dehydrate your entire body, which I'm sure everybody knows we do not want that. Properly hydrating has been shown to increase your all-cause, or decrease. If you don't, being chronically dehydrated increases your all-cause mortality by like years. Like I think like 5 or 10 years. It was something really shocking. Just drink water. Oral health is a big one. Again, you just want your oral microbiome to be good. And breathing through your mouth does not make it good because there's all sorts of things coming in and disrupting it. So you want your oral microbiome to be happy because, again, we've linked bacteria in the mouth to all sorts of things from Alzheimer's to heart disease. So it really and this is just breathing through your nose or mouth, which is wild. And then, like I mentioned before, nervous system. If you breathe through your nose, you tend to be more relaxed. If you breathe through your mouth, you tend to be chronically anxious or chronically in a sympathetic state. So that's breathing through the nose versus mouth. The middle one is just exhaling properly. A lot of people don't fully exhale. Again, there's 1,000 different reasons for that. It could be that you're stressed. It could be structural. So it could be something to do with you've hurt your back and your diaphragm doesn't contract properly. It could be that you've hurt your neck and your phrenic nerve that supplies your diaphragm to so there's a million different things that we could hypothesize as to why. But if you guys want to just take a big deep breath in right now through your nose and then exhale all that air out. And then in again. Exhale it out. If you exhale all the air out, it feels quite different than what we do on the day to day, at least for me. I was like, that feels significantly different. I don't exhale all the air out. Not that you have to get every drop out, but people are generally inhaling, exhale a little bit, and then inhale, and then exhale a little bit. So they're always kind of taking in these sips of air. And this is called chronic hyperventilation. And it doesn't have to look like you like that. It could just be, taking really shallow, quick, deep breaths where you're taking in a lot of air, but not letting a lot of air out. Again, this is a chronic stress thing. So it could be from chronic stress or create chronic stress because they're a reflux. They'll go back and forth. The last one is kind of confusing because I just wrote shallow breathing, but this is, you should be breathing light. And by this, I mean the less you breathe, the better it is for you, which is, again, shocking. You would think that hyperoxygenating yourself would be good, but if anybody knows, oxygen to anything causes oxidization, which is the aging process, right? So if you leave bread out and you don't cover it and protect it from oxygen, it starts to get stale and old faster. Same with our bodies. And that's just one of the many reasons why you want to breathe light. Another one is CO2 intolerance, which this is the test that I did to see where I was. And essentially, in really quick terms, the test is easy. You just exhale and you hold your breath. And then you see how long you can hold your breath for. When you breathe in again, you do not want to be gasping for air or gulping for air. You want to be able to just go back to a normal breath pattern. So it might take a couple tries to kind of figure out where that is because it's so arbitrary. Am I breathing normally again? Yeah. So you want to be able to hold your breath, but when you take breath in again, it doesn't feel drastic. It's just you can go back to a normal breath. And essentially, if you're under 10 seconds, you are a person who is CO2 intolerant. So that means that the accumulation of CO2 in your body, you're not tolerant to it. And this could be, again, for a million different reasons. One of them could just be that you've been chronically hyperventilating your whole life, which I'm guessing I did because, stress or trauma or mental health issues or whatever, that's a big one for people, but it also could mean that there's something underlying. So asthma, COPD, anything to do with lung. The cool thing is that CO2, building up CO2 tolerance, and what that is just breath holds, holding your breath, and then going back to a normal breathing. And it doesn't take anything crazy. You can just sit down, do 3 breath holds, and then go about your life. And you will find that within a week, you'll be able to hold for 20 seconds or 30 seconds or 40 seconds. It builds up, your tolerance builds up really quickly. And that tolerance helps you with so many things. But I've listed a couple of them. So less anxiety, less depression symptoms, less inflammation. So working on your CO2 tolerance is really a really good thing to do. And you want to be around the 20-second, 30-second mark, but I don't, again, the time it's kind of arbitrary because you can take someone who's 4'2" and then someone who's like 6'9", and someone's going to have a better score. And it's like, okay, what is it just because, time is different for that body? Like maybe. So it's important to recognize those things. Like someone who has a bigger body might have a better or worse time with CO2 intolerance. But yeah, those are kind of the three ways that you can look at yourself and be like, how am I breathing in these arenas? And what will it look, what does it feel like if I make that change? Do I feel better? Do I feel less stressed? And stuff like that. Okay. Next, the health benefits. Um, Again, everything, like it's breathing. But physiology and anatomy are the same thing. One is just stuff that you don't need a microscope to see. Physiology is still anatomy, but physiology, so you'll have an increased CO2 tolerance, which I talked about, less inflammation, better mental health, less stress, more focus, less pain, blah, blah, blah. The studies on chronic pain are phenomenal. So could be anything from like endometriosis to fibromyalgia. Um, it's really great. Or even back pain. There's amazing studies on back pain, just back pain. The anatomy, this is one of my favorite things to talk about, is how breathing is one of the best ways to pump lymph throughout your body. So like I said before, with the aesthetics, like you can go get a lymph massage, but you could also do breath work and probably get a very similar result, because the biggest lymph node in your body is right under your diaphragm. It's called the cisterna chyli, and nobody can massage that ever. It's impossible to get to with your hands unless they cut you open. And then the biggest lymph duct, which is a vessel that carries lymph, actually goes on the anterior part of your spine, which again, no one's touching the anterior part of your spine. So they can move lymph around, definitely for sure, and help you a lot, but they can't help you with the biggest lymph nodes and biggest lymph vessels, which if those are blocked, it doesn't really matter what you do to the other stuff, because it's just going to come right back. So knowing how to breathe and using your diaphragm fully it will help you pump lymph around in a way that is beyond. And then it helps you pump more blood to organs. And if anybody knows anything about blood, it's like a magic elixir for healing. Like it will bring white blood cells, it will bring nutrients. It's like if you try to heal a broken leg, but you don't have good blood supply to that leg, not happening. This is why a lot of diabetics have issues with, getting their feet amputated, is because the lack of blood flow. And a better immune system. So practicing breath work can increase your immune system, but also just breathing properly can also do that too. There's nothing really much to say about this. It's just, I wanted to throw it in. It's so cute. Like I sat today and looked at it for like 10 minutes, just being like, that is cute. That's some Valentine's Day stuff right there. Okay, moving on. The aesthetics, like I said, it's not really, doesn't really matter as much as like just like general health stuff. But again, people care about it. They spend a lot of money and time on it. And I always like to talk about the benefits of it. So lymphatic drainage is one of the things that I talked about. That has a plethora of health benefits, but also just like a lot of people think that they're fat, but really they just have lymph pooling somewhere, right? And that's, a big issue, because that could lead to, something unhealthy, like chronic dieting or whatever. And again, I'll just say like fat is an organ. I always like to say this: fat is an organ. We need it to survive. Like it literally produces hormones for us. It's you. I love fat. I love fat. It can change your facial structure. Your nose and your jaw can change big time. Your skin health. So one of the things that happens with chronic mouth breathers is they'll get big bags under their eyes, and those are really hard to go away if you are still mouth breathing. And then it's like, again, it's one of those things where people are going to get like Juvederm injected into their face, but they could really just tape their mouth at night, and the problem would be solved. If you have issues with your eyes being kind of cloudy, or whatever. I've noticed that it really makes my eyes a lot more clear, like the whites of my eyes. Oral health, and then hair too. Breath work can help reduce your anxiety. So if you're someone who's dealing with hair loss, which happens with stress, it can be really good for that. Also, a lot of people get hair loss when they get lymph buildup on their skull. Um, and that can build up if you mouth breathe at night, especially because the lymphatic system only turns on at night if you're getting a good night's sleep. And then if it turns on and you're not breathing properly, the lymph isn't going to pump that well. So you're going to end up with like a lymphy skull, and that could potentially lead to hair loss. All right. And then just lifestyle. So if anybody's ever gone down the rabbit hole of Joe Dispenza, he's one of the people that talks about personality and how our personalities aren't real. He's like, they're kind of made up of just like the emotions that you carry around. And it's so true. My grandfather, we used to call him Grumpy Gramps because he was, for lack of a better word, an asshole, like an actual asshole. Rest in peace, Gramps. but but my grandmother left him for the neighbor, and he was not the same since. Like he was, it's a really good story actually, because her sister was already sleeping with the neighbor. I know it's wild. Oh man. I love my grandparents. They are slutty. Like it's wild. My grandma wore black to her wedding. Anyways, I anyways, I could talk about them forever. They're fascinating. Her and her sister are fascinating. The reason why they made money in life was because they posed topless for painters. So we have like so many paintings of them just tits out. Anyways, so our personalities can be made up of the emotions that we carry around with us, right? So if someone doesn't have the tools or the means to process things that happen in their life, like my grandfather, they could end up being resentful forever. And they'll put that on to you. They'll put it on to anyone that maybe wasn't even involved because they just have that emotion stored up in them. So I'm a big fan of, I mean, obviously, I love breath work. It was a game changer for me. I'm not an emotional feeling person. You probably will never, like it's just I'm not. I have a hard time showing my emotions. I think Ian was like the first person I ever cried in front of, and I still have a lot of difficulty crying in front of people. Um, but it's a little bit easier now that I'm pregnant. But breath work was like, I remember doing a breath work and like crying and being like, oh my God, this feels so good to like feel something and let it out. Um, so the idea for me or how it's changed my life is that I get to let go of shame, guilt, fear, resentment, like all these things that I was carrying around that I didn't really necessarily need anymore or want anymore, and they were holding me back from doing things like starting the being method. It was an idea I had since I was 23, but I never did it because I was too scared. I was scared of what people would think. I was scared that it would fail. I had a lot of shame, like, who am I to do that? And then I had to go down the path of doing a proper job and like having this whatever thing. So if I had just practiced more breath work and done it, I could have maybe released those emotions and just been like, you know what, you only get one life, so you may as well just do the one wacky big thing that you want to do, and nothing's guaranteed. Okay. Well, that's it. That's it. Now it's Q&A time. There's a lot of us here. So to avoid multiple people talking at the same time, if you guys have questions, do you want to put them in the chat? And I will do my very best to answer them. My oldest daughter is often congested and is a mouth breather. She wakes to pee throughout the night. It's so true what you're saying. Yeah, I think it's so, I mean, I don't know what they do for chronic bedwetting now, but what they should do is be like, are you breathing through your mouth? Oh, thank you so much, Sarah. That's so sweet. breath of air. So fun. What are your thoughts on Kundalini type breath work? I love it. I love any type of breath work. Like, I think it's all good. I think at the end of the day, just does it feel good for you? Is the question. Like, I know people who don't like Kundalini because it's very activating. But then I know people who love it because they like that like energy. I do Kundalini breath work. I do the Benshen course, which if anybody's ever done it, it's really, you meet every morning at 7 a.m. and you do half an hour of breath work and meditations together. I love it. Um, she's gonna be on the podcast soon. You've mentioned how breath work can help with weight loss. Can you elaborate on that? Yeah, of course. So we don't actually know the mechanism behind it. There hasn't been, I don't think, I haven't checked in a while, but there hasn't been any clinical studies specifically done on this. But in Patrick McEwen's book, The Oxygen Advantage, they started doing breath holds. So those breath holds that I was talking about with CO2 intolerance. And they had I don't know what the sample size was, but they were doing that with a group of people to help them with asthma. And a lot of the people started losing weight and they hadn't changed what they were eating or their lifestyle at all. So they weren't exercising, they weren't eating anything differently. And I mean, the easiest way to put it is just that carbon, when we have carbon from carbohydrates that you eat in your body's either going to use it or store it. And it will store it as fat, which is good. We want that. And then for whatever reason, if you're not exhaling properly, so if you're not exhaling carbon dioxide, your body's going to store more of it. So the people, I'm guessing, who built up a CO2 intolerance and started breathing properly, they probably started to lose carbon through their breath. Because if anybody knows how we lose fat, we don't sweat it out, you breathe it out. And if you're not breathing, you're not going to breathe out fat. And again, I just say this I don't think there's anything wrong with having fat on your body at all, ever. But I do know that some people do want to lose weight. So and I'm a big proponent of doing that in a mindful, healthy way. And anything that stops people from taking like Ozempic, or is that what it's called? That weird shot, or doing whatever else people do crazy in that world. I'm a big fan of just talking about the stuff those small lifestyle changes that we can make that are easy and fun. I think breathwork's fun. The days I mouth tape at night, my HRV plummets. Ooh, interesting. Wonder why this could be. I don't know. Why would your HRV go down when you mouth tape? I guess I would have to know more about you, but I would want to know if you are a mouth breather, because that could create a reflex where your body might be building up your nasal cavities again. In Breathe by James Nestor, he talks about how if you have not breathed through your nose very commonly in your life, you have to go through a period of basically retraining your nose. So it could be that because it's maybe difficult for you to breathe, your body might be responding by getting stressed out, because HRVs it's our vagus nerve. If anybody doesn't know, HRV is just your heart rate variability, and there's apps like Aura Ring or whatever that can track it. And a low HRV means sympathetic state. So yeah, I mean, short answer is I have no freaking clue, but it would be, I guess we would just need to study you a little bit more. What is the difference when you exercise and breathe through nose? Breathe through nose, out through mouth. I'm guessing you meant in through nose or just through nose. I'll just speak to whatever, both of those things. So basically breathing through your nose while you exercise is like having a governor on. And then when you breathe through your mouth, it's like hitting NOS. That's my way of putting it. NOS meaning like that button in the race car things, because you saturate your body with oxygen, and that oxygen is going to go to your tissues and you'll be able to use it. So a lot of people will train if they're in athletics, especially running, they'll train with nasal strips on and they'll tape their mouth, because it forces you to become more efficient at using less breath. And then what will happen if you go to compete, as soon as you start to breathe through your mouth, you become like supercharged. But it goes down into the Krebs cycle and recycling pyruvate and all those things, which is like beyond me. I'm like, you go runners, you do your thing. But yeah, that's the kind of the reason. That's why a lot of people who live in the mountains are just really they're at such a benefit for athletics because they have um, elevation and they can have a lack of oxygen there. And if you nose breathe and that, and then you go to like somewhere flat to say compete for a marathon, you're just going to smoke everybody because you've been training with such constriction for so long. Any recommendations for congested nose and painful periods? I mean, congested nose, it's just one of those things that can have 500 different reasons. I have heard a stat that the majority of nasal kind of issues can come from mold, not to freak anybody out, but a lot of our buildings are moldy and you could have lived in one like 10 years ago and you still have biofilms in your nose. So doesn't mean that you have like mold toxicity. It could just mean that it's in your nasal cavity. That's one thing. It could be that you're eating something that you're sensitive to is another thing that can cause chronic congested nose. It could be that it's just winter and you need a humidifier. Like there's like a million different reasons. So I mean, whether it's you're not breathing through your nose, that could be it, or there's external things that are causing it to be congested. I don't know. We would need more information. But painful periods, um, diaphragmatic breathing, laying flat on your back and like doing a breathwork practice. It could be any of them in the being portal that will help big time because anytime you move your diaphragm, your pelvic diaphragm moves in unison, it's going to help massage your uterus. I have a problem with tight nostrils, so it's difficult to breathe fully sometimes. Is this affecting me? What can I do about this? Like you mean the hole? Your nostril hole is small? I mean, read Breathe by James Nestor or Oxygen Advantage by Patrick McEwen. Both of those books are going to answer any questions about like, I have a hard time breathing through my nose. Can I fix it? They would say yes. Patrick McEwen had his nose broken several times. I think he was an athlete. I don't remember his background, but he had like a very messed up, deviated septum. Like he had a terrible time breathing through his nose and he rehabbed it just with breath work. And now he goes on to like help kids with asthma. And because he's found that there's so many things that you can help just by, practicing it more. And it takes work, right? Like if you haven't used your right arm in 10 years and you think it's going to do the same thing that your left arm does because you've only been using that, it's going to take some while. It's going to take some rehab. About light breathing. Did you mean that it should almost be light and not audible? I don't know about audible. Um, it just means that it shouldn't be often. Like you shouldn't be gasping for air all the time. So if you guys can tell me talking, like I'm gasping for air because I'm pregnant, um, and I'm not breathing light. I'm like, um, but it should be that breathing is full, like you're exhaling, you're not just breathing shallowly. It's but it's not like a big ordeal and you don't have to do it. I mean, I don't remember how many times you're supposed to breathe per minute, but it shouldn't be a lot. You shouldn't be chronically hyperventilating. I think that's what he means. And he always says in the book, because I listen to the audiobook and he's Irish, he's always like, breathe a lot to breathe right. And he says it like every paragraph. Tips for optimal breath work in pregnancy. Just got to 6 months and already finding myself out of breath with sleep activities. Yeah, I think it just comes with the territory of being pregnant because our blood volume, like I don't even remember how much blood we gain, a lot, liters and liters and liters of blood. So it's just harder on the cardiovascular system. That's it. There's nothing wrong with you. It's just one of those things that comes with pregnancy. It has nothing to do with your fitness level or, whether or not you're breathing properly. It's just your body has accumulated a new organ, a new human, and lots of blood. and it requires you to breathe more because we have to fill that blood with oxygen. So yeah, I would say breath work and pregnancy, the ones that I focus on are just calming things because we know cortisol surging through your body when you're pregnant is there's so many things that that can lead to for yourself and also the baby. So I just try to make sure that I'm like regulating my nervous system and staying really calm. Thank you. Thank you. Ever since having COVID, my lung capacity has been terrible. Yes. A year ago, and I'm having trouble building up insurance again. Light exercise, bring on heavy breathing quickly. Breath holds helpful. Yes, big time, big time, big time. I can't say this because obviously everybody gets shot if they talk about COVID, but um, that happened to me when I had COVID. Also got POTS, which is osto, or postural orthostatic tachycardia. It's when you get really dizzy and you almost pass out when you stand up. And that can happen. It's from your vagus nerve. It can happen with any viral. So people with Lyme, people with COVID, really common. And then I was out of breath a lot. And again, like I'm an active person. I was like, this is really weird. All I did was started doing more breath work, all of the different kinds of breath work, and then doing breath holds too. And that helped build back up my CO2 tolerance. But it should help. Do you have a favorite mouth tape brand? I don't. I've never taped my mouth. I am somehow blessed to be a nose only breather, but I know there's tons of things. If I were going to do it, I would just use masking tape because it's like doesn't really hurt to take off and you can buy it. Like I'm not that out there spending $40 on tape. Like I would go to the dollar store and I would just get like regular old tape and use it. But I know there's like special shaped ones and stuff, but yeah, that's what I would do. I've heard that weight can be used as a barrier, like a wall between us and our outside environment. I wonder if the breath work and weight loss happens, feelings of safety. Yeah, I mean, I've definitely heard that too. I don't know. I can't speak to that. Like that's like I hear it in kind of the spiritual world. Um, we can accumulate weight on our body because we have surges of cortisol. So it would make sense that if you're experiencing stressful emotions all the time, like say something happened to you that was a traumatic event and you're still processing the fear from that. Like, so I got into like a pile up on the highway, however long ago. And now whenever I drive, I get scared. Like I'm like really scared in the car and I notice my cortisol surge. So that could cause me to gain weight because I'm surging my cortisol chronically with that. So emotions can totally play into our physiology in any way, shape, or form. I would never say that as like a hard yes, like that's what weight is. Like I have no idea, but absolutely our emotional well-being and mental health can play into physiology and anatomy. For clearing my nasal passages and neti pot so helpful. Yes, my husband loves that. What's the one? There's like a supercharged one that he has with a it's like battery operated. And has anybody tried that? It's crazy. It's wild. It feels really good. I find it super supportive. Yeah, that's such a good thank you for that, Sarah. Neti pot. Obviously, I'm a person who's never had nasal problems. I'm like so far from anything I've ever done. But yeah, neti pots are amazing for helping with nasal congestion. Put a little sea salt in there and go crazy. If anybody's like, am I moldy? Then put some stevia in there. Or there's X Clear, which is like a spray. Stevia breaks down biofilms, but go easy on it because you can re-expose yourself. Tips on using breathwork to help with snoring. It's a hard one too. There's so many reasons why someone can snore. It could just be the shape of their pillow. Ian was snoring a lot recently, and then it's because I bought new pillows. And then once he went back to his old pillow, he stopped. So there's, again, a bunch of external factors that can happen. But snoring, I think, commonly comes from uh, Yeah, a chronic mouth breathing typically. So mouth taping can help with snoring big time, and then getting those nasal strips that can open up the nasal passageway um, can be really helpful. But yeah, there's too many reasons why people snore. There's so many. My mom snores as she drinks, so no drinking. um, have you listened to the Wise Traditions Weston Price podcast, Full Full Breath? I have not. Talk about how the less you breathe, the longer you live. Yes, exactly. That's the oxidization that I'm talking about. And that's why you breathe. That's why you breathe light to breathe right. So yeah, the less you breathe, the better. Is there a way to train yourself to breathe through your nose during sleep without taping your mouth? I don't know. I don't think so because we're asleep. So we're kind of unconscious. Like our body just kind of does its thing. So, I mean, you could play around with like your pillow or something, but yeah, um, people feel. I heard of this tape. It's good. Only 10.99. Amazing. Thank you, Lindsay. People can sometimes feel stressed about taping their mouth. I'll just say like you're not taping like this. Like you're not holding yourself hostage. You just take a single piece of tape and you put it like this. So if anything does happen, you have the size of your mouth to talk through or breathe through. So I'm not sure if that's why you're avoiding taping your mouth, but that's um, it feels a lot less stressful to put it like this. As a lifelong mouth breather with asthma and a mold yeast allergy, I couldn't agree more with this as I'm missing teeth, have chronic sinus issues, etc. Also scared to tape my mouth at night. So same question. Yeah, it's definitely scary. I would just say if it seems really scary to you, practice. Just put it on for an hour before bedtime. And then if you go to sleep and you're like, I hate this, just take it off and kind of work up to it. It's like anything else. Um, I always use the example of running because no one starts running and they go for their first run and they're like, wow, that was amazing. They're like, that felt like hell. Like, why do people do this? But then, a month into it, you're like, oh, now I get it. Now I feel high. Um, so yeah, I would just say like kind of ease into it. Don't stress yourself out, but just practice taping your mouth during the day when you're working, like if you work on a computer. Like I know tons of people who will sit there at their computer with mouth tape on. So yeah, that's what I would say to that. But yes, it definitely can affect the physiology. I tape my mouth at night and it honestly feels super comfortable, and when you get used to it, it helps me sleep better. Yeah, that's I hear that a lot, that people just sleep better, which sounds, everybody loves sleeping good. Okay, what breath work are we gonna do? I'm thinking we'll do, hmm. Let's all actually test our CO2 tolerance. I feel like that would be fun. And I don't ever normally do this. I never talk about it. Better sleep, what a dream. Yeah, exactly. So I never do this just because again, the markers are so arbitrary. So we'll do a practice one together. You guys give me a second. I will have some water. So again, if you get a low score, doesn't mean you have like a disease or anything. It can mean that. It can mean that you have, COPD or asthma or something, but it other times it's just we're really stressed. These are the people who, when they message me, they're like, breathwork really stresses me out. I'm like, because you probably have CO2 intolerance. And unfortunately, the only way out is through. So the only way to get better at it is to practice it. And that's it. That's all. So you guys can find yourself in a calm seated position. Um, I'll put a timer on and we'll all do it together at the same. Oh no, because then I can't time all of you. Silly MJ. So if you if you don't know how to count like me, get your timer out. Or your stopwatch. Sorry, your stopwatch. But you can just count in your head like a normal human being. So all you're going to do, like I said, is you're going to take a normal breath and then you're going to hold on the exhale. And then we'll see how long you can go for. And then when you take your breath in again, you don't want it to be like, you don't want to be like, like you were like holding it forever. You just want it to be like, you want to just go back to normal breathing. So we'll do a practice one. And if you find that you were like, okay, I pushed it, like I was not, that was not till I like had to like gasp for air. Like I shouldn't be able to tell that you were just like, if I was sitting across from you, no one should be able to tell that you were just holding your breath because you should just, your breath shouldn't change. That's the goal. So I'm pregnant. I'm not going to hold my breath. And if you are pregnant, I mean, I wouldn't do it just because you're breathing for two. You can, once you're done postpartum, you can go back to doing all the fun breath holds. But if you're pregnant, I would just sit this one out and like I will. And sometimes I forget. I forgot and I went scuba dive or not scuba diving. I went like snorkeling and I was holding my breath for so long. I was really freaking out. Baby's fine. Baby's fine. Um, so yeah, all you're gonna do is take a normal breath. And then on the exhale, once you're empty, you're gonna hold your breath. And when you're ready, you can put your score. This is just a test. But yeah, 9, 14, 17, 14, 20, 29 seconds. Jesus, Grace, Breathwork Master. So yeah, those are all great, really average scores. Mine when I first did it was around 9 or 8 seconds, and that's where I was like, "Whoa, this is really surprising for someone who can run a half marathon tomorrow." Like I was like, "This, that's really," and like run it fast. Like it didn't make sense to me that my cardiovascular system was, or it was just not up to speed. But Aaron, it doesn't mean that you're not healthy. It could just mean that you are like me, a stressed being. But yeah, so if you guys felt like, did anyone hold their breath too long and feel like they were gasping for air? I did the first time I did it because I'm competitive and I was with my husband. But yeah, that's kind of like the barometer, the test to see where you're at. And then if you want to do the practice, like the breath holds practice to increase your CO2 tolerance, one of the ones that's talked about in the oxygen advantage, which I like doing because it's compounded with another thing that I like doing, which is walking, is when you're out for a walk, you inhale, you exhale all the way, and then you just count how many steps you can take. It's a little bit harder because you're moving, but that also builds up your CO2 tolerance faster because your muscles are using the oxygen and spitting out CO2. And then you stop and you go back, you take like 10 normal breaths, and then you do it again. So you only do it like 3 to 5 times. And if you do that every day when you're like on a walk, listening to a podcast or whatever, you'll increase your CO2 tolerance huge. And this leads to like a huge decrease in your anxiety and a huge decrease in just like inflammation throughout your whole body. And it's so simple. Does anybody have any last burning questions about breathwork? When did you begin to work with and study the breath? I was 23 when I did my breathwork certification, and then it's a big part of osteopathy as well as just breathing mechanics and all that jazz. So that's when I learned the deep anatomy and physiology that I do. So I guess it's been almost 10 years. It was pretty wild, but I have not been working on breathwork for 10 years. How do you increase CO2 tolerance again? Breath holds, breath holds. So the walking breath hold that I just described is how you increase CO2 tolerance. Anytime that you're holding your breath and just doing it in a way where you're not stressing yourself out. That's how. Oh, I've already taught them. We've already done it. Sunday's really responsive. Like she's in the toddler era now, so she has like a lot of emotions come up around things like why won't they let me hold that knife? Um, and we like practice breathing together because you can't logic through emotional dysregulation. You can just try to show what can help. Can you give us one example on a simple, good first breathwork exercise? Huh. Um, Simple, good first breathwork exercise. Oh, I'm stumped. Um, it would, yeah, I would just say like breathing in for 4 seconds and breathing out for 8. Because I think most of us need to be put into a parasympathetic state. So I would say, practicing just breathing in for 4 seconds and then breathing out for 8, just making sure you have like a slow, longer exhale, puts you into a nice, calm parasympathetic state. Thank you, Jessica. I love you. Um, yes, if you want, I was supposed to be selling my courses throughout this whole thing, but I forgot. But yeah, obviously, if you guys are interested, there's the Being portal you can join. That's a monthly subscription. It's $22, very accessible, and it has tons of different breath work. I just uploaded the partnership one, which helps you with emotional regulation in partnership and in dating, or just to help you show up to that arena if you're, calling that in. And so that's kind of the newest thing on there, but there's tons of stuff that help you access your intuition. The emotional clearing breathwork on there is the most popular one. That's like the one where a lot of people will have like a big release. So if you're looking for kind of like that big release breathwork, that's the one, the emotional clearing in there. It's pretty powerful. Not to toot my own horn, but yeah, it's good. I get tons of emails and DMs about it. And then the Being method is a certification course that I have that teaches you how to be a breathwork facilitator and then also an energy healer, not in the sense of Reiki per se, but more in the sense of like learning about mitochondria and learning how sound and light affect the body. So I'm really big, obviously, on, nature and natural ways of taking care of yourself. And I'm not opposed to pharmaceuticals or anything like that, but I just like looking and being like, okay, well, if we're prescribing this person an Ativan, but they're mouth breathing, could we potentially have them breathe through their nose and see if they don't need that medication, right? So I'm a big fan of natural stuff first, obviously, if it's possible. And my favorite breath work in the portal while pregnant, the protection one. I love that one. Um, that's my favorite one, but you can do any of them and just don't, if you're doing one of the ones that's sympathetic, just don't breathe the same way. Don't just do a nice slow breath. You can do your own thing. So you can tailor it to yourself if you want. You don't have to avoid it totally. I do the emotional release one all the time. I just don't do the sympathetic breathing along with it. I do slow release breathing, and sometimes I still have a big release, a big emotional release. So yeah, that's kind of the way. I'm like, how else can people? Yeah, those are kind of the two ways to do it. The course launches again in March. We do a March cohort and we also do a September cohort. And it's pretty fun. You're in a little group for 6 months and you have access to it for life. The Being Method launches in March. Yes, this March. And every March it launches at the beginning of Aries season. So the beginning of the zodiac new year. Because it's like, when March happens and you're just like, oh my God, do I have energy? Like I love that. I love that part of the year. Thank you guys so much for coming, giving me your time. So deeply appreciate. Um, does anybody have any last burning questions about breath work? Okay, well, I don't know where you guys are all located, but it's 5 p.m. here, so that means it's my bedtime. There's one big piece of chocolate cake in the fridge that I'm gonna eat, and then I'm gonna go get tucked in and embarrassingly read the final book of what's it? 50 Shades of Grey. I'm reading that for the first time. Pretty cool. I don't know anything about the BDSM world, so it's been very enlightening. Not that it's portrayed very well, I hear, but that's what I'm doing tonight. I love you guys. Thank you so much for joining and giving me your time and learning with me. And yeah, I love you guys. Bye.